You hear the name Elon Musk, and you probably think of a few things, right? Electric cars, private space travel, a level of wealth that's just hard to even wrap your head around. But his empire, it wasn't built on playing it safe, not even close. It was built on a series of absolutely wild, all-or-nothing gambles that pushed his companies right to the brink. So let's dive into the story of how he repeatedly went all in, risking everything for a shot at changing the world.
Just to give you a sense of the scale we're talking about, at its absolute peak, just one of his companies, Tesla, was valued at over $1 trillion. That's trillion with a T. I mean, that's bigger than the economy of most countries on Earth. The success is just astronomical. But trust me, the journey to get there is even more unbelievable.
So the big question is, how did this even happen? It definitely wasn't a straight line up. You can think of it more like a high-stakes poker game, where he just kept pushing all of his chips into the middle of the table again and again. And to understand those massive bets, you first have to know where he got the cash to even sit down at the table.
Yeah, before all the rockets and the EVs, Musk was a dot-com guy. This is where he built his foundation, that initial war chest that would end up funding his wildest dreams. It all starts back in the mid-90s, when the internet was just starting to explode. Okay, what's kind of crazy when you look at this slide is just the speed of it all. He starts Zip2 in '95, sells it just 4 years later for a huge payout, and then immediately, like the same year, rolls that money into his next big thing, an online bank called X.com. That company, after a legendary merger, eventually became the PayPal we all know, which eBay then snapped up in 2002. So that's 2 massive wins in just a handful of years.
And this was his personal cut from the PayPal sale, $180 million. Now, for most people, for you or me, that's the end game. You've won the game of life. You never work again. But for Musk, this wasn't the prize. It was just the buy-in for a much, much bigger game.
And this right here is where the story gets really wild. With his entire fortune, every last dollar, he didn't diversify, he didn't play it safe, he went all in on 2 industries that were, famous for just burning through cash and crushing people's dreams: space travel and the car industry.
I mean, you have to think about how insane this looked to everybody at the time. On one hand, he's deciding to take on giants like Boeing and Lockheed by building reusable rockets from scratch, something even NASA hadn't really nailed. And then on the other hand, he's challenging the entire global auto industry with electric cars, which back then were basically seen as glorified golf carts. The experts pretty much universally thought he was completely nuts. And get this, he knew the odds were terrible. This quote says it all. He wasn't some naive dreamer. He poured every single dollar he had into 2 companies that he himself believed had a 90% chance of total catastrophic failure. I mean, who in their right mind makes that bet? It is the literal definition of a high-stakes gamble. So for years, both of these companies were just hemorrhaging cash. And everything came to a head in 2008. This was the moment where both of those 90% chances of failure looked like they were about to become 100% reality at the exact same time.
Let's just walk through this timeline, because the pressure just keeps building and building. In March, SpaceX's 3rd launch fails in a spectacular fireball. By August, they have just enough money left for one more try. One. Then, the whole global economy collapses, and Tesla is running on fumes with maybe weeks of cash left. It all comes down to Christmas Eve, 2008. With total failure just hours away, NASA calls.
I really want to pause on this for a second, because it's the absolute climax of this whole story. This isn't an exaggeration. He was borrowing money from friends just to make payroll. Both of his life's ambitions, the 2 dreams he poured his entire $180 million fortune into, were about to be completely wiped out. But they didn't die. That last-minute NASA contract saved SpaceX, and in final, absolutely desperate funding round, saved Tesla. And what came after that near-death experience? Well, it was one of the most incredible turnarounds in the history of business.
Remember that 4th do-or-die launch for SpaceX? It was a flawless success. All of a sudden, they weren't just some scrappy startup anymore. They were the first private company to ever reach orbit. The bet on rockets was starting to look like pure genius.
And then came the Tesla Model S. This thing wasn't just a good electric car, it was a phenomenal car, period. It absolutely shattered every single stereotype, One Motor Trend's Car of the Year, and proved that electric vehicles could be the fastest, safest, and coolest things on the road.
And the milestones just kept coming. SpaceX went from being practically bankrupt to launching American astronauts to the International Space Station, ending America's reliance on Russian rockets to get into space. The gamble had paid off in a huge way.
And would you just look at the payoff on this chart? It's staggering. From being on the edge of worthlessness in 2008 to today, where their combined value is in the hundreds of billions of dollars. The scale of the return on those insane, high-risk bets is almost impossible to fully grasp.
Which, of course, brings us to today. The gambles didn't just stop with cars and rockets. If anything, they've only gotten bigger and way more ambitious. So what is the ultimate goal here? What's driving all of this?
So what's the why behind all these crazy bets? Well, according to Musk himself, the money is just a tool. It's a means to an end. The two big missions are really clear. Tesla isn't just a car company, it's an engine to speed up our move to sustainable energy. And SpaceX isn't just a rocket company, it's supposed to be our lifeboat, to make sure humans can survive long term. And his newer bets, like in AI and Neuralink, they seem to follow that same pattern, tackling these huge, species-level problems.
And so that leaves us with this question. The scale of his influence is so massive now that he is, in a lot of ways, literally building the future. It's a future that was born from a series of visionary gambles that came incredibly close to failing. And what we have to think about is what that future, built on such audacious bets, is ultimately going to look like. One man's gambles are shaping our world, for better or worse. The final cards have yet to be played.